A well-respected voice around the Orlando Magic has mentioned that there are 3 players that the organization should not be afraid of trading if they want to build a contender. Today we're going to go over who those 3 players are and what could possibly be the next steps for the organization if they were to entertain a trade for those guys. But first, make sure that if you're watching this video, you subscribe to the channel and join the Orlando Magic Digest YouTube channel family. This is a new graphic, so obviously join the 9.4% if you're watching this video, because most of you who are not subscribed, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. Easiest and best way to support us over at Magic Digest. Now, let's get into the article from the well-respected voice. It comes from Elaine Blum, who is the site expert over at Orlando Magic Daily, so I challenge everybody to read this phenomenal article about these 3 players. But before we get into who they are, this is what she prefaced at the very start. She said, right now the Magic are still a tier below those teams. She is mentioning the 76ers and the Boston Celtics for obvious reasons. They have a shot at making the playoffs and maybe even securing home court advantage, but they are not a contender yet. That is still okay. The Magic are still incredibly young and have some things to figure out before they are in the right place to make an all-in move. And then she gets into saying that when they get there, they're going to have to part ways with some players. So, before we get into the very first name, I just wanted to also say that it's a very interesting thing because a lot of fans don't exactly look this far ahead, and myself included, don't exactly look this far ahead, but it should be important to mention that while we love all the guys on the roster, we think that they're all going to be great, technically, if this team were to raise the Larry O'Brien, it's very unlikely that they're all going to be a part of that everybody on this current team is going to get a ring, right? We just saw, Marcus Smart get dealt after so many years, fan favorite to the Memphis Grizzlies. And, the Boston Celtics finally were able to break through. So I think it's just important to mention that some of these guys you're going to really like. We don't know how much their trade value is going to be, but obviously the team cannot be afraid to end up making a move. So let's get into the very first player that she mentions, Cole Anthony. This is a guy I've actually mentioned over the last week and a half or so. About like possible trades or him being an accessory into different types of deals, especially for an all-star. She mentions Cole Anthony, and here was her logic behind it. She said he's 24, so he's kind of reaching that potential peak area. So we might see the best coming soon. She said that he's 34% three-point shooter, which is obviously true, and it's a good number, but it's not the best. And what could attract teams is kind of his scoring off the bench. He's the 6th man for the Orlando Magic, the top scorer off the bench for the Orlando Magic. And with all of those different things coming into, putting into one player, he's also on a team-friendly contract. So that's going to attract a lot of contenders who are either trying to make a quick move at the deadline and might be able to get off of a couple guys, or could attract a lot of people or a lot of teams that are just trying to, end up trading a superstar, or looking to have the deal sweetened. If you're dealing with a team like the Magic, you don't want anybody else. So I think that this is a very interesting trade piece. Cole Anthony, I'm not exactly looking for the Orlando Magic to trade him prior to this season. I think whenever you put a lot of faith into Jalen Suggs and you say that we want to see how he's going to act as point guard number 1, as the number 1 facilitator, I think having Cole Anthony there to ease some of the growing pains and some of the scoring load, I think is really, really important and super, super beneficial to his growth and Suggs' growth. And so I don't really want to see him traded or off the team until after we know exactly if Suggs is going to be that guy. We see Anthony Black much improved in the Summer League. Is he going to end up taking more of a role in the Magic's guard rotation? Well, that remains to be seen. I think he will, especially with Markelle Fultz leaving, but that still means that Cole Anthony's value is very important to this team. So unless you were able to get a backcourt scorer, like a maybe more prolific one, we just talked about Darius Garland the other day, I don't know if you're making that move. But definitely something to keep an eye on, because something that I easily could see the Orlando Magic doing. Now, the next player that she ends up talking about is Wendell Carter Jr. This is a guy who I've mentioned over the last month now, who I think might not even be on the roster when the season tips off for the Orlando Magic. So he has probably an even bigger appeal to some of the contending teams. He's an expiring contract, so he's kind of more of a rental if a team were to make a trade for him. and he can space the floor, and he's shown that he can play winning basketball because he's kind of took a step back on this Orlando Magic team as they've grown and they've seen many iterations of the squad, played under different coaches, been a part of organizations at all kind of sides of it, except for a true contender. So I think that's really valuable to a lot of teams. And we just talked about the Lakers being very interested in Wendell Carter Jr. I could see him on a team like LA, and I could also see other teams saying, hey, the Nuggets went and got Aaron Gordon from the Orlando Magic. Maybe we can take one of their forwards who is underutilized or has taken a step back in recent years, or maybe they're not using him right. And I think that is certainly great for the Orlando Magic and great for Wendell Carter Jr.'s trade value. Now, I don't know exactly if they would be able to use him like the Nuggets use Aaron Gordon, but I definitely think that's a conversation that's probably being had as things are, stand currently. So I think it's really interesting. The article goes into just kind of him being taking a step back, like I said, and then obviously he is a good rebounder, can stretch the floor, but where does he fit on this current Orlando Magic roster, especially, whenever you re-sign Jonathan Isaac or, restructure his deal and you re-sign Mo Wagner, go to Badatse, and you've got a full front court. Where does he fit, especially with his injuries? Played 55 games last year. He didn't really look 100% like himself. Like, where does he fit on the Orlando Magic roster? Kind of could see him getting shipped out as time goes on. So that would be the second player that she mentioned. Now, the third player, and probably the most surprising of the bunch, and what I think will lead to an even bigger conversation about where the organization is at right now, is Jett Howard. She mentions Jett Howard as that other player that the Orlando Magic cannot be afraid of trading. Now, this is multifaceted, so I'm going to go into exactly kind of what she was talking about. Well, she mentions at first that when you talk about Jett Howard and his trade possibility, you also have to mention Anthony Black. And I think that is super important. And I wanted to share a quote from the article that she had. She mentions that in regards to trading to trading Jett Howard, that it is not to say that the Magic should absolutely move him. This only applies if the right deal comes around or that they will never trade Anthony Black. The thing with Black is that the Orlando Magic is exactly the type of player, he is exactly the type of player that the Orlando Magic love. And he could grow into one of the team's building blocks. Moving on from Howard just seems easier to stomach, especially if it turns the Magic into true contenders. Now, I don't really disagree with anything that she's saying here. I think I would only add slightly after just seems easier to stomach for as of right now. As of right now, as it currently stands, Jett Howard is about 4 weeks away removed from bust allegations, from this guy is a G Leaguer for life, why did we draft him, Nepo baby kind of like serious like hatred from some, I don't want to claim them, but from some Orlando Magic fans who were really out on Jett Howard. He just recently had a really good summer league, and if he were to really grow into his potential on this team, that is probably more valuable than what Anthony Black could be in a year or two. Truthfully, Jett Howard, if he were to be that sharpshooter who can score, that sharpshooting scorer, that would be so great for the Orlando Magic. We've been begging for that for about 2 years now, and it would just be phenomenal. So I would say for the time being, as it currently stands, Jett Howard would probably be the choice for the Orlando Magic to say bye to when you're talking about him and Anthony Black. But I also wanted to get into just kind of like the timeline of things because I like I said, for right now. But when we look in the future, just separate from Jett Howard and Anthony Black talk, we could see many different situations for the Orlando Magic. I wanted to bring up the Lakers before they were made the trade for Anthony Davis, when they had LeBron James, they had all those young guys. Felt like they were in a win-now mode, and they were, and they wanted to be. And they traded all those young guys to get Anthony Davis, and it worked out. They won a championship. But you see that they weren't all able to flourish, and they had to make a deal. They had to make a win-now move, and you tried to make it work for the first year. You didn't want to trade all those guys, but you had to. And then we look at the current Oklahoma City roster. They drafted unbelievably well, stacked up on picks. Now they're kind of pushing the ball down the road in the draft. But they just traded Josh Giddey for Alex Caruso. Giddey had a lot of different issues going on this year. Didn't fit, had personal issues, was down this season, had poor shooting numbers, didn't really fit on that team. The organization, the actual roster itself outgrew Josh Giddey. progressed faster than his progression would allow. So he fell off being on that team. So they ended up trading for a guy who could be, match their win now mentality, give them defense, give them exactly what they need in the moment. And that was Alex Caruso. I don't think that if you would ask Thunder fans a year and a half ago, if they wanted to trade Giddey, they probably would have said no, right? Because he was a part of that future plans. So I just think that those are important things to mention. And then also, with the Chicago Bulls a few years ago when Wendell Carter Jr. was on that squad, you had Markkanen, you had a few other guys. Like they weren't able to grow together because it was just a logjam. And the Orlando Magic fans certainly know logjam because we had that in the forward position for all those years. So I say all this to say timelines are so important for building contenders, and the Orlando Magic are in a very, very similar situation as far as they need to assess what their timeline looks like, and you're going to see some players leave in the future that you might not want to. So you just gotta, as an Orlando Magic fan, deal with that. But wanted to end this with a quick question. Everybody in the comments, let me know who you think out of this bunch, these three players, you would most be okay with the Magic sending away. Is it Jett Howard for being young and not there just yet on the timeline? Cole Anthony because you can match that scoring, you get somebody else who could do his job, could be an accessory to a bigger trade, or Wendell Carter Jr. because probably dealing with the contender with that, and he's on an expiring deal. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I will see you guys next time with more Orlando Magic basketball news.